I feel pretty confident in saying that every person who's ever tried to learn English and every native speaker of English can agree that English spelling sucks very bad. Here's some examples. Possibly the biggest reason why English spelling is so bad is because it's hardly changed since the Middle English period 500 years ago, when the phonological system was entirely different. Many people have recognized this over the years, and some of them have actually been successful. But some of them are YouTubers. In this video, I'm going to look at some English spelling reforms proposed by other people on this very platform. I mean, I have an interest in linguistics and some general knowledge, and too much free time, so who else is gonna do it? But here's a disclaimer before I start anything. I like all of these channels, and English spelling reform is very hard. I've even tried it, and I will never let it see the light of day because it's so bad. But don't hate on any of these people. Actually, I encourage you to check them out. A lot of them have really cool videos about stuff that I think is really cool, and if you're watching this video, chances are you think it's really cool too. Alright, so let's get into it. The first YouTuber I'm going to talk about is K. Klein. He has a lot of really cool videos about linguistics and stuff that I find interesting. The specific videos I'm going to be looking at here are When Spelling Reforms Work and English Furigana and the Problems of Spelling Reform, both of which are in the description. I start with K. Klein because he has less of a full-on reform and more some cool ideas that might make English spelling easier to remember and to learn. In When Spelling Reforms Work, he proposes something that German does where doubling consonants is a standard way to mark short vowels. Like this, basically. And in the Furigana video, he proposes to include diacritics, specifically in a way influenced by Japanese Furigana, which he explains way better than I ever could. I actually do like his ideas a lot and think they could be helpful. Also in those videos, he points out some common traps that people fall into when they're trying to make an English spelling reform, some of which will appear here. The second person I'm going to talk about is Jan Misely, who actually inspired me a lot, and I hope he sees this video. He makes a lot of cool videos about linguistics and other nerdy stuff. I'm going to talk about his video, Most English Spelling Reforms Are Bad, and his reform in the video, The Fun Reform. First off, the entire point of this reform was to have fun, so it's not like he was trying super hard to replace English spelling or anything, he just wanted to make a fun reform. Which is why I named it that. So when I critique how the fun reform looks, it isn't like I'm tearing apart his entire life's works. This is just my personal issues with the reform. When Jan Misely was making his reform, he had a bullet list of goals, which can be seen here. And here's the written sample. Sorry Jan Misely, but I personally don't like this reform very much at all. Let's start with the first thing you probably noticed. The word reform. The initial E vowel is very versatile. It works for when the word sounds like reform and reform, which I does, but the letter I doesn't work for reformation, and the original E letter does just fine. Also, he fell into one of K. Klein's traps, removing C. Now, I really do admire how he tried to distinguish the vowels in English because English vowels and the representations in the orthography is a mess. But the way that he did it here messes with the long-short vowel pairs in English, making obliged look nothing like obligation. Changing the G to a J doesn't help. One letter is allowed to have multiple sounds. The etymological link is clear in our spelling, but in the fun reform it would be more ambiguous. But besides that, I like how he wasn't afraid to use diacritics. I don't know why we're so anti-diacritic in this language. Putting diacritics in our fucking language would solve half the problems. Throughout this reform, Jan Misely actually creates cases where the new spellings are more ambiguous than the old ones, like blue and blue and wrapped and wrapped. And a fun reform spelling of should would make it less clearly connected to the word shall. A big part of English spelling reforms is that it needs to accommodate all the dialects of English. But in Jan Misely's spelling of off, he only accommodates to people who have the lot cloth split. But on the bright side, I do appreciate his spelling of warm. We should change the spelling of warm to that and the spelling of worm to this. Overall, this reform is too divergent from traditional English spelling for me, and there are some decisions I do like, but a lot that I don't. The last person I'm going to talk about today is Cranny. He's around the same size as me, and he makes a lot of really cool videos about linguistics and other stuff. He attempted to make an English spelling reform and how to fix English spelling, and he even references K. Klein in the video. In the video, he does bring up some good points, but let's see if that reflects in the spelling reform itself. Here's the sample, which is the Lord's Prayer. First of all, I do like removing the E from forgive, which would also apply to words like give and have, and remove ambiguity from live and live. I also like removing the A from heaven, and understand why he doubled the V. Like K. Klein said, it would distinguish 7 from even. Although, I think that two V's like that could be confused for a W. That isn't Cranny's fault though, I literally don't know what other way you would go about fixing that inconsistency. I also appreciate him fixing the vowel in earth, although I prefer this spelling. What I don't like is the spelling of the word father, which can be confusing for people who don't have the cot or father bother mergers, like I do. Someone from New York would read that as father. Real quick, come and spell like this, and that's pretty funny. I also don't really like the spellings of hallowed and into. And I understand why he changed final Y to EE, probably because final Y can be pronounced as I or E, but I personally don't really like how it looks. Overall, this is less divergent than the fun reform, but it still has some issues. To wrap this video up, this wasn't meant to take anybody down. If anything, it was meant to point out how hard it is to fix the mess that is English spelling. Do you think that we should change English spelling? Leave your answer in the comments below. Also, I encourage you to check out all the people that I mentioned in this video. They're all really cool. Like and subscribe and stay tuned for more videos. See you later.